when I'm making a painting, I haven't planned them, as I said, and sometimes it feels like, oh, there's a lot going on, and I just again want to create this tension between abstraction and representation, or between something feeling like it's complete, but let's like break it down a bit as well and create more fragments.
Yeah.
And for me, that's really when a painting is finished, when it's maybe not behaving in a traditional way. I don't know. It's hard to kind of describe that. I don't want them to be polite.
Hey, good afternoon, friends. I'm Omar Yusuf, co-founder of Don't Look Projects. I'd like to welcome you to our artist talk with Diana Taylor, hosted by Javier Proenza of What's My Thesis. Diana is a UK artist, and this is her first solo show in the US, presented in association with SLQS Gallery in London. Diana is currently doing a short-term fellowship at the Huntington, where she is building upon her practice-based research. Her PhD was in collaboration with the William Morris Gallery in London, and she completed her MFA at the Slade School of Fine Art. In 2011, she was awarded an Abbey Scholarship in painting at the British School in Rome. And Taylor's mixed media paintings explore time, fusing research and materiality. She scans, crops, and recontextualizes images from diverse reference books, then screen prints them repeatedly on canvas. This body of works was created during a residency last year at the 18th Street in Santa Monica. Her show, Flotsam and Jetsam, will open to the public today, right after this talk, and will be on display here at Don't Look through August 30th. We'll hold space for questions at the end and invite you all to participate and enjoy the artist talk with Diana Taylor. One last thing, if you aren't already, please follow Diana, Don't Look Projects, What's My Thesis, and SLQS Gallery.
Okay, so I usually like to start with origins to get an idea of what their background is, what kind of life they've lived. So tell me a little bit about growing up. We talked a little bit, so everybody knows we had a little pre-interview. So a little bit of this it's not scripted, but we have an idea of where we're going with it. So tell me about growing up. Your mother is from Cyprus and your father is British, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, my mother was born in Nicosia. She is no longer around, but my father is in London. He grew up in the UK, and he first went out to learn ancient Greek, actually. He studied at Oxford and was studying PPE. He went to Cyprus to learn ancient Greek, and then also to be a volunteer to kind of, during the conflict, to try and keep some peace. And that's when he met my mom. So,
okay. So around what year was that? Tough question. I'm sorry.
Late 60s, I want to say, because they came back in 71 or something like that.
71. Okay.
Something like that.
Because the big thing, as I recall, as I looked it up, is was in 74. That's when there was that Greek,
yeah. So they met before. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
exactly.
crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So a little bit about what kind of environment you grew up. I feel like it helps kind of give us a sense of where someone comes from and kind of what motivates you. We're going to get because I'm American, I don't really know what London life is like. It could be a cottage, it could be, countryside, it could be city. So what was the dynamic? Because when I look at the work, I see a lot of, it doesn't say landscapes and country, even though there are landscapes and country in there. Yeah.
Well, I did grow up in the countryside-ish, in a village in the countryside in Wiltshire, which is southwest. So I've lived in London for 25 years, but I grew up in Wiltshire. It's a very ancient landscape. There's the first White Horse Hill nearby. It's kind of really druidy. It's not far, it's not a million miles from Stonehenge. And, so in this part of southwest England, there are a lot of really magical kind of ancient places and ruins. And I think this probably seeped into my work,
Seeing all the well, we'll get into that because there's a little bit that we want to talk about time and multi-temporality, which I think that's something that I don't experience so much here in the US.
Right.
but I grew up in Rome. And that is,
In Rome?
and that's the Eternal City, which has like multiple cities.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that is an experience that I think now that you explain what the surroundings were, gives me an idea of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
All right. And then take me from your first, I like to get a sense of your first memories as an artist, as a young kid. And then I like the idea of that journey. You know, we're going to get into your education a little bit later, but that moment, that first moment that you started to really realize that like, okay, this is something I have to do. I can't not be an artist.
Yeah. My granny on my father's side, who lived in Shaftesbury, which is also in the southwest, very near to Stonehenge. And she was an artist. She painted landscapes. She painted the English landscape. And I just remember loving being around her, and also always looking at picture books. And when I was at her house, when we went down there, I'd look at like early picture books and illustrations, and that's always been an obsession of mine. Is like the image, just imagery, you know, and it stems from early childhood. And then on my mother's side in Cyprus, we'll talk about this probably a bit more, but she was very much into craft and traditional crafts and crocheting and tapestry. And so the house there, my grandparents' house there, was full of tapestries and cross-stitch. And it was stuff that my mum and her sisters all made. And it was part of their schooling. It was a women, like a girls' convent school, and they all had to do this. In
Cyprus? Wow.
In Cyprus.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was this mix. When my mum came to the UK, they moved to a place called Trowbridge, and it was this mix of her interests and the crochet and the tapestries and stuff with a very quintessentially English kind of look. I'm going to reference a couple of people that you might not know, like Laura Ashley. English people will know who I'm talking about. But it's very kind of William Morrissey as well. Like she was definitely influenced by Morris. And so my mum really loved this. So it was this sort of mishmash of like Greek, Cypriot and British and like, and different things, like some things that were replicas of, or, you know, but quite highly decorative and ornamental, and hence all the patterns.
Yeah. So the interest in patterns has been from like an early age?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and then when was that moment that you were like, because at a certain point you started to take this seriously, right?
Yeah.
When did that click for you? Were you like, sometimes it's like you can't help yourself. Like it's like you will be sad if you don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't not be drawing. I was just always drawing and painting. So
that's the original thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a special respect for people who know how to draw.
Yeah. I was just obsessed with it. And like you say, it's a sort of compulsion in a way. But also this kind of idea of what, you know, my process is like a collage approach, as you can see in all of the work, even if it's not paper and glue. And I actually think that comes from this. I sort of remember my bedroom in this village where I grew up in Wiltshire, and it was like this Laura Ashley wallpaper, pink and green kind of pastels, and my duvet was the same pattern. It was like the worst. I didn't want that. Anyway, and it was like a lot of pink going on, and I had this big Jane's Addiction poster, you know, and like there was The Cure, and so it was this weird mishmash of like something very quaint with Jane's Addiction, you know, who were from here, weren't they? Like, and,
I think so.
and sort of, you know, slightly goth or that kind of,
Well, now it's like a Wes Anderson's, style, right? Like that whole thing of like just multiple patterns within the frame.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which kind of alludes a little bit to what we're going to talk about a little later about overstimulation with imagery.
Yeah.
But all right, so then what kind of stuff? So you started off drawing, you're evolving now. what kind of stuff were you making when you first got your MFA for painting?
Okay.
Because were you at this point still doing collage? Collage has always been a part of it, or has it evolved from like maybe more traditional figurative stuff or abstraction?
There was always a kind of collage approach. I was always kind of like, I can put this picture next to that picture, and like I can layer this time next to that. When I finished my MFA, during the MFA, I was really into screen printing, as I still am actually. But I realized at that point, I can screen print onto, obviously, canvas. I was painting on wood quite a lot then, so I was screen printing onto wood. Actually, I was also like drawing out the grid, and I was making large murals as well. And I was like, why am I drawing this grid? This is taking such a long time, and drawing like huge grids on the wall as well. And then I thought I could just screen print on everything. I screen printed on the walls at times as well. And I did these big, like all encompassing paintings. So that's what I was doing at the Slade. And I was just, the paintings got quite big, and I was really, like trying to push them, trying to really like see how far I could push them in terms of imagery. But there's always been this sort of process in which I'm painting and kind of unpainting stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that. Because it's especially like when I'm thinking, we'll get a little bit more into the digitality of stuff, but let's get loose. And the painting on painting thing is interesting because I feel like, with the digital side of things, you undo and it's no longer there.
Yeah.
But when you paint over something, like you're literally unpainting it, but then it's still present there, right? Like, in fact, they could X-ray it like they do.
Yeah. That's interesting because there's like, I've kind of thought about this idea of pentimento, which is, this idea of to repent in Italian, like, so the word pentimento in like traditional painting kind of talk would mean to paint over when painters were painting something and they would think, actually, I want to change the limb from there to here or whatever. So they're like quite purposefully trying to cover that up. But my way of like covering up or erasing or it's not pentimento, but it's like I kind of think of it as unpainting. I want to make it explicit. So, for example, in this painting here, there's a point where I want to undo the image. I want the paintings to kind of flit between abstraction and representation. And I'll talk about all the opposites going on, but it's very much about this. I really want to have the tight grid and the loose gesture and something that is familiar and complete, and then it's fragmented. Yeah. But it's very much this intention to undo, to obscure, to kind of hide. So this is where the sort of gestural language comes in. But it's also a formal thing in painting. It's like I just delight in seeing these opposites come together.
No, for sure.
In other people's work, obviously.
Yeah. No, but one of the things that I think is that you play well with is flatness and depth, right? Like we can get a little bit into that, but first, I kind of want to ask, because there was something when we in our pre-interview that I thought was really interesting. It's a new word to me, so I of course I had to bring it up. But you got your PhD in contemporaneity. Yeah, well, it was in fine art. It was in fine art, but your focus was on. Yeah. I went down this route of, the work is very much about time, and if we think about the times that we live in now. The study of that, if you like, in the contemporary art world or contemporary art theory is called contemporaneity. And it's kind of inward looking. It's like, what does contemporary art, what do our contemporary times mean? How do we characterize them? What are the conditions that we live with now? And so there was this whole research project
called contemporaneity, or the conditions of the contemporary or something. The contemporary condition, that was it. And I just became really interested in everyone in that area who was writing, because it started to really sum up for me what I think is going on in my work and in our times, which is this, if I put it in a nutshell, which I have to really, it's defined, if you like, by anachronism being major, kind of this idea of not being quite in your own time because you're constantly looking back. And that is a characteristic of the times in which we live because of the internet, right?
Yeah.
So we're constantly looking back, and we can have also many times going on at once. Sometimes I refer to that as polytemporality or multitemporality. I've heard of historians call it transhistorical. So, but it's this idea again that because of the times in which we live, this internet age and digital age and an age of distraction, we are living with so many things all at once. I mean, the film title, Everything All at Once, sort of also describes this idea of non-linear time.
Yeah, no, and that's a little bit related to kind of the entire conversation of. It's hard to. I know that you apply a lot of techniques that are not specifically what's it called? Not traditional. You're using digital. You're mixing a whole bunch of different things at the same time.
I do. And
what I find interesting about the idea of contemporaneity is the idea, it reminds me a little bit to get metaphorical, the idea of how we figure out that where we stand within our own galaxy, within the Milky Way. It's different when you're looking at another galaxy through a telescope and you can see and you can spot stuff, but the whole idea of how they process it, you don't have that extra dimension of hindsight of history, right? So the idea of this white noise is kind of what I get from what we're talking about, right? I think the word is undifferentiated field of digital slop, right? Where it's almost too much to consume or to even imagine trying to conceive of the entire internet at once, how overwhelming and how under-equipped we are to process all that information, right? Yeah. So the idea of all that coming at us. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I think that we're alluding to the idea of cultural blindness in this conversation, which comes from that, right? It's almost like there's so much information that we can't. That's what's fragmenting society a little bit, right? You can literally go down your rabbit hole and someone else can go down their rabbit hole. Yeah. And you will just not come out.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. I mean, these words, undifferentiated slop, so this is Alex Estrick who wrote this press release. And I think he's really bang on there. And he's very much interested in this digital aspect of how I'm mixing or hybrid kind of painting that's going on. I mean, it's everything's there, isn't it? In this melting pot of
melting pot,
layers of many different tabs open on a screen or something like that. Or, sometimes I find myself also I'm doing so many things at once.
Yeah, sometimes I have to pause the television to finish what I'm doing. I can relate to that. Well, and then I think the imagery, let's talk a little bit about the works more directly, because we are here to talk about the show.
Absolutely.
But I like the idea, especially when you're talking about digital consumption, the wording of the marine wording of floats, marine debris, flotsam, jetsam. Yeah. Which I think is interesting because I don't, unless it's broken and planks of wood that are floating, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that maybe in a shipwreck ends up coming loose. So it's kind of hard to differentiate whether it's flotsam or jetsam. Flotsam is, for people that don't know, flotsam is from an accident. It's like not intentionally discarded, and jetsam is stuff that's like been thrown into the ocean. So that imagery, I think, really is like spot on for the kind of work that we're doing, and to verbalize that kind of that experience, you know, of just digital digital noise just overwhelming your brain. Any other thoughts on that, on the flotsam jetsam? Just how did that tell me? It
just came across. I like the expression. I like the words, and I just thought that could be the perfect title for kind of describing this collage approach that I take to the work. And that it's also stuff that's been disregarded. And I think that's really important to what I'm like. It's a sort of revaluing stuff that might be discarded or things thrown away, or creating value out of ruin or throwaway ephemera. I collect a lot of stuff, imagery and fabrics, and it's like high and low, you know, kind of cultural references. So it was really a kind of nod to this revaluing by sort of giving these fragments or relics or like the debris of stuff. But often I'm also thinking about, and it's the reason why there's really no figures in my work, is because I'm quite often thinking about the things that might be lying around after we're gone. So like, what could it be? It could really be anything, you know. So it's this sort of like a trace of civilization. And I suppose I think about, like nature and culture, and this sort of swinging between a sort of,
but I
like between them.
I like the idea of imagery, like visual information, just being flotsam and jetsam, and especially the way that you present it, there is a fluidity to it, right? Even though there is imagery that directly references oceans and whatnot, the whole collage just feels like a wave could come in, you know, and shift everything, which I think really speaks to what we're talking about. Let's talk a little bit about your materials, because I think that's really important, and we kind of hinted at it, but we haven't really talked.
So the process and the materials. Well, to start from scratch, I get canvas, which is usually pre-primed because I want a super flat surface to print on. And I quite often take a big ream of canvas and just stretch it out through the studio. And I'll start often like throwing washi paint on, or spray paint, and I just want to make a sort of a sort of really washy background. Then I will roll that up, cycle down the canal and try and prop it up on my shoulder, or and go to my local printmaking studio, which isn't far. And I take a load of acetates there. So the imagery that I screen print, what I've been doing with these works is, I was saying I have a collection of lots of books. Lots of them are obsolete, quite old. Lots of illustration.
Is the William Morris stuff like specifically British, or do people out here know what that is? Okay. Okay. Sorry. Sorry for interrupting.
That's fine.
I'm going to look some up because they look amazing.
They are amazing. Yeah. I mean, with these paintings, you can see like there are images taken from a book, which is about, like prehistoric animals in the sea. There's another book that I used called The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which was written by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and that was illustrated by Gustav Doré. And I'm really obsessed with early print. That's why I'm at the Huntington, looking at their early print collection. It harks back to looking at this book as a child. It was my brother's book. Sorry, this is quite a convoluted way of telling you about my process, but I'm going to speak specifically about these works. So this was my brother's book. It was this poem, and it's these super fine illustrations, woodblock illustrations, which are obviously then reproduced in the 1960s in this book that I have. And I just remember being like so mesmerized at the work, the craftsmanship, and this fine carving that's been printed, and really being drawn in.
Did you have any idea at the time, or did it just seem magical? Like how the process of these books, how these books were made, the printing?
As a kid?
Yeah.
No, I doubt it. No. No. I don't think so. I mean, later on I was like, carried on looking at
it clicks.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa,
yeah.
You can do this.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't just happen. Yeah,
when you start studying that too. So what I've been doing is I scan those prints in the studio, and then I'll digitally manipulate them, and either I'll zoom in and keep zooming in until they become very pixelated, because I'm just like going in so far that the image becomes poor and broken. Or I'll just take segments and enlarge them. So I'm scanning, lowering the resolution by zooming in quite often. Then I enlarge that image, print it out onto acetate or sometimes just paper, and then you oil it up. I mean, I won't describe the screen printing process because it's so difficult to understand unless you're doing it.
Or you mean exposing the
photographic process is just, and it would be boring actually. So now you do this, and
it's basically like developing a photograph essentially, and then you just spray water on it, and then it's stuff. It's fun.
It's really fun.
It's crafty.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And then you prepare the screen. I mean, it's not that boring if people don't know about it, but I get what you're saying.
But to describe the process would be,
I'm just remembering how fun it is.
It's great. Yeah, absolutely. You can't cut any corners.
No.
Right?
No.
Yeah. And then I screen print those, and I quite often, they're not planned. I mean, I think that's probably quite evident. The paintings I don't plan. And so I screen print, I'm just going intuitively. I'm working intuitively with color, and then I'll take those back to the studio, and then I stretch them. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, okay, what's going on here?
No.
Also like the crochet, bits of crochet, those are screen printed on, and you'll see the crochet in these paintings. Quite often the motif is repeated. You'll see in this painting here as well, there's like at the bottom, the pixelation, and that's like the waves from the sea in the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. So I've almost taken like a little centimeter from the illustration, blown it up. So what was once this very tight, beautiful wood carving becomes digitized. And then the mechanical screen printing process. So it sort of goes through this process of like one author to another, one hand to another. The same with the crocheting. It's like this little woman in Cyprus would have been sitting on the streets in this little village in Lefkada doing this little thing. And then I'm kind of playing with this idea of the copy, of authorship and appropriation of things that are already out there in the world.
I know automotive culture is not necessarily as big. I know you guys have Top Gear in the UK, but what the crocheting really reminds me, I'm going to give you another visual reference that's interesting, especially, and it's very LA based, but the idea of using lace or crochet or anything that's knitted as a thing for painting cars. So they'll paint candy. So like lowriders will have this like beautiful, colorful paint. It might be interesting to look at that for reference, just because I know that.
Amazing.
Just add it into the Flotsam.
No way.
Yeah,
people use it to spray their cars.
So I'll show you after the talk.
Stencil.
Yeah, like a stencil, and then so they'll tape off a section, and it'll be like it'll be this beautiful lines, everything and patterns, and then there'll be a section that's all just lace. It's much more rigid and formatted, but that's like, it's one of the first things that I think of. And since you're
Only
in LA,
in America.
this is part of my cultural.
It's slipping, isn't it?
Yeah, it just doesn't want to stay. It's really cool, and I feel honored to be. I'm not even of the lowrider or Chicano culture, but it's one of the things that's cool out here, and I think that it's awesome that you're already touching it a little bit. And in the 70s, that was really big on motorcycles too. The
You're gonna have to look it up.
It's like I watch a lot of car shows.
Okay, I don't.
Yeah,
I can't.
But yeah, no, I do see the pixelation. I really find that interesting. I've seen people use pixelation as like a thing of beauty, but the way that you use it, especially when you're using it in conjunction with like much more topographical looking patterns, and then it's almost like you're zooming into that, and it looks, when it's at a certain resolution, it looks still kind of natural, but then once you get in, you pop in. I think that's a really interesting way of kind of playing with that dialogue of this, the idea of unfamiliarity, but familiarity, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's something that you said that I'm going to bring up now, but it's the, where is it? The digital artifacts, all sensory perception preloaded with digital artifacts. So there's a naturality to, like, it feels natural to us because of the contemporaneity that we live in. But the idea of pixelation is just such a new concept, right? Like, I don't think that there was a point plotting maybe.
Well, but then it's funny because actually, this is also referencing like, they sometimes end up looking like old mosaics. So they could reference like that.
That is true. That is a good point. A lot of the, where you see in the painting, for example, at the top there, where I paint into the grid, I take these patterns that my mum was using in her tapestry, and I might take sections of them and I'll paint them into the grid. So they're actually quite often some of these, the pixelation of the colored kind of pixelation, the painted pixelation as well, that comes from craft. And it's funny because in my studio a few weeks ago in London, we had open studios, and these two different kids, two different times came in, and they both just went in and went Minecraft. It's like they both kind of saw that, I haven't even seen Minecraft, but but I mean, they were spot on. People, So it could be a mosaic from ancient Rome, or it could be a tapestry pattern from the 70s, or Minecraft, or early. I kind of think also of early computer games, having grown up in this time where my brother and I would load the computer, go off and have dinner, and it would still be like, that kind of time. You know what? Those times are coming back because you have to download games now. Yeah. There's a whole political thing where people are upset that they can't own their own games anymore. Anyway, it's completely off topic. Talk to me a little bit about collapsing binaries, like in the work, because I think that that's something that, it's just, it's something that is evident, but if you could point out specifically what kind of binaries we're talking about, how specific we're getting, or how metaphorical we're thinking.
I mean, I think it's always been something that I've loved. And I think it does hark back to this like Jane's Addiction poster on the Laura Ashley wallpaper. It's just sort of this creating these tensions that I always loved doing. So it was just a purely natural thing. But then, so it's also this kind of interest in like, these things are always apparent binaries are kind of useless, right? Because they are interconnected. I mean, William Morris, art and craft, then I'm bringing in high and low culture. That's been done, many times. Old and new. There's very tight graphic, the grid, with very gestural, loose painting, nature and culture. So I guess I'm always like wanting to converge those things. And again, I suppose I feel like that's very relevant to these kind of blurred boundaries that we live with. today. You know, there's a sort of blurring of media, and this is very normal for artists to work like this, you know, swinging between digital and analog, traditional and digital media.
Well, just the idea of that process of going back from different machinery, you know, and there's a thing that really stood out to me when you were about imagery that we're going to get into once we get into more the philosophical and the conceptual conceits of the work. But I did want to ask you real quick about the idea of using technology in ways it's not intended to be used. And feel free to just put your hand here and push it. Yeah, push it up.
I feel like I'm going to break it.
No, I give you permission to.
Okay.
That's what I want to avoid, just like almost hitting with you in the face. Sorry about that again.
Sorry.
Go ahead. So I guess the best way to start this is like, what was the first thing? Because you referenced an artist that.
Oh yeah.
What was you talked about it? You describe him, the one that prints and then pulls the.
Yeah, Wade
canvas.
Guyton. I was talking in our little chat the other day. I was talking about this artist, Wade Guyton, and I just love his work. I don't know if you guys know him. He also worked with another artist I can't remember his name. If anyone knows. Anyway, they call him like the painter who doesn't use paint. He makes enormous paintings with these big sheets of canvas, and he will kind of take the screen shot of his homepage or like his laptop or whatever, and all the different things going on, all the different files, or an email or whatever. Everything's kind of layered, and he will print it with it like a big inkjet printer on the canvas, but sort of like drag it through. So the effect is that it's really blurred or distorted or stretched. So he's forcing the technology to do something which is not meant to do. I mean, he's obviously got a lot of money to be able to do that. He is.
He's not worried about breaking a printer.
And I think it's interesting because it's something that Alex Estrick and I spoke about, this idea that like you've got these obviously high-tech, very advanced ways of using new media, you know, like Silicon Valley and AI and all of this, which is like hurtling forward. And then you've got a lot of artists who kind of respond to this new media quite often by wanting to disrupt or force this sort of error, like forced failure. And I'm interested in that too.
Making AI have hallucinations and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Do you know what that is? It's just making AI. Some people will sit online and just argue with AI and like it's actually a subgenre of YouTube. But yeah, they'll just go there and then they'll catch it in logical fallacies and stuff, because it's like the idea that it is this like perfect thing, and it's the way that it's being hyped is like typical of like a Silicon Valley cycle. Yeah, you know, like what was it? It was like the cloud was the biggest thing, and it's always constantly. But then they just become kind of like bland, like parts of reality. Yeah, you know, uneventful. Yeah. But did you ever play with like anything?
I mean, I quite like using like things like photocopiers and, you know, to sort of also distort stuff. And I think it's got a lot to do with being an artist who makes with their hand, a painter really, you know, and feeling quite often out of control with new media, you know, like I can't make it do that. It's just, you know, I can't touch it and manipulate it like I can something else. And I think it's probably the case for a lot of other artists. And it's more interesting to push it into the realm of what can we make this do? You know, so I've been doing that with like 3D scanning and printing. I did quite a lot during my PhD research of like 3D scanning these old fabrics that my mum had, and recently plants and stuff, but like doing it quickly and forcing it to be quite low res. And then also, rather than 3D printing anything, actually pushing it back into the 2D and forcing the program to, again, like, it's like, what are you asking me to do? You know, and I'm like, well, just do this, you know, be a screen print, you know. So trying to create something in a way, like you say, that's not intentional to that technology.
That's amazing. I like the idea of, because I've never played with any of that 3D stuff, but the idea of scanning something and then sort of telling it to be like flat now.
Yeah. It really confuses it, and it creates these, you can really create some amazing imagery.
It reminds me of world maps, you know, when we try to flatten out something that's spherical and we have to like make it in sections. We can't just make like a a global map.
And it also harks back, you know, to like the stuff that I'm looking at comes from books. It also comes from JPEGs, you know. I don't entirely just use like books. It's, again, swinging between printed material and digital material, but it's always flat. So I'm always working as like the flat image, and even where there's depth, I think it's a very shallow depth, which I'm quite interested in.
Like only a few inches. Kind of thing.
This sort of screen-like thing or page-like thing, you know.
You just reminded me, when I was in college, I had studied in Florence, and I had a teacher that would draw the floors at like in churches, because they have all those little gradations, but like just slight gradations. So he would put like a croissant on or cornetto on a plate, and cigarettes on the floor, you know. But it was like literally this was the depth, and it was just an interesting. I like that idea of just keeping it like shallow, you know. I play with flatness a lot too, so and patterns. So all of this stuff is definitely resonates with me. Yeah. I'm taking stuff away.
Well, coming from Rome, I mean, Rome is full of like so many amazing floors. I couldn't stop photographing the floors, and actually that came into a series of paintings. But it's like this sort of also moving between dimensions, between like the floor and the wall, or like, you know, like playing with different planes.
But well, the whole city is like a architecture, is a 3-dimensional collage,
it's
right?
A palimpsest.
It's palimpsest. Oh, new word. What does it mean?
It's like the, one time layered on top of another. So you'll have like, let's say, a 16th century church, and then that gets ruined, but they kind of try to remake it, and like years later. And so there is actually one in Rome which is just like that. The further deeper you down you go through different ages.
Yeah, and the where the gates of heaven are in Florence, I think the octagonal. There's a cathedral, and I forget what it's called. But there's the separate little piece that used to be a pagan.
Exactly.
You know, so all that reappropriation stuff. I think that's an interesting thing that, like, definitely, I mean, I love LA. I'm not saying anything bad about it, but it is so, like, that layeredness of European cities is something that I think I definitely miss when I'm not there. You know, like that and it's nice to talk to someone who has a similar background and is an artist as well, because I think that's helps me understand you a little bit better. But and we're also kind of hitting right on the money, right? So art history since modernism has not been linear. That's one of the things it's something I've heard before. It's something I agree with. You're obviously not a modernist, but even though you take there's through process
references,
even though there's references, there's not anything specifically. I think one of the things I think is interesting about postmodernism as a art movement, and I mean, basically everything kind of is that now, you know, even I've been working on stuff that's just so basic, and then I still, people are like, oh yeah, that's really conceptual, you know, like, but, I want to get back into that multi-temporality, living with many times as one at once. And you have specific time frames that you juxtapose. We talked a little bit about, I mean, we've already covered some of this: medieval prints, William Morris, classical sculpture, craft from Cyprus. But you were talking a little bit in the state, or in the press release for this, about isolating moments where meaning breaks down and you kind of rewrite history. Talk a little bit about that to me.
I suppose it's like this kind of, by reconfiguring, by sort of creating this, you know, like collage-y assemblages, or, you know, it is like a sort of reconfiguring of different histories in a way, as a way to kind of reflect the times that we're in. And as we were saying, they're very it's very multi-temporal, isn't it? You know, these times. So yeah.
I think that's kind of what I like especially with talking about cities, you know, that have that level of history.
Yeah, and the city is like that, isn't it? And you know, you can go through, and it's funny, like even where I'm staying, but all parts of the city, and it's in London too, but like you can go from many, you know, from one history of architecture to another, and someone's, you know, we were looking at it on a road the other day, like, you know, one house has got turrets, and then the next house is like mock Tudor, and then the next house is whatever, you know. So it's quite, I do love that about living in the city.
Yeah.
You know.
No, and that's something that caught me off guard, because I came from Miami, and they were still building those neighborhoods that have only like 3 different models. So when I came out here, I was like, what, Spanish colonial? I mean, I know that Woody Allen has like a bit in one of his movies about how frustrating that is. But I think that that's one of the charms of LA, right? Like that, like vernacular architecture just sitting next to each other.
Yeah, I like it. I love it.
It is like a collage.
It's like you know, it is like a collage, isn't it? Like an assemblage that's out there, you know, in the 3D, in the real world, the 4D, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Well, and not so much a question, but maybe you can talk a little bit about this. But I love the idea. I also work with pattern, the idea of pattern as visual friction. That and something about that friction slowing you down, right? So like in these pieces, we can definitely look at them, and you can see that the grid setup is kind of keeping you, it slows you down. And I think that that's where that motion comes from.
Yeah.
You know, that feeling that I was telling you, I think because of the stability of that line and the not chaos, obviously, but like the looseness with which things are arranged, it does feel like at any moment it could just like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? So I just wanted to acknowledge that, because that friction or pattern as friction is interesting. Now, this is one of the things that you said that I thought was fascinating too, is the images produced by machines for machines. Now that I think is fascinating, because now you get into a context where visual media is no longer for humans, and it becomes something that maybe the human doesn't even have to read, right? Like with all this AI stuff. What have you come across? Like, what were you talking about when you were thinking about
that's
that?
what Alex wrote actually about my work. But so yeah, I mean, I guess it's this thing that we're sort of like taking and then inputting, and it's like this kind of process, like of sort of meta process of like one thing coming from a machine, and then you push it back into, I mean, it's just this kind of toing and froing, I suppose.
Toing and froing,
I think, is what he's talking about.
Yeah. No, but it's just an interesting idea. Like, where does art history go when you can make art for machines? You know, like, and then what relevance does it have to us? Or could you eventually get to where AIs can appreciate art? You know, and start questioning
that. Would be interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing, right? Sentience with AI. So
yeah,
we could be headed that way.
We'll see.
I guess you mentioned a little bit about your interest in natural disasters. We're wrapping up now, guys, so no worries. But just, you know, natural disasters, we've just had fires here, which were pretty devastating.
Yeah.
And one of the things that having lived in Miami, hurricanes, it's a moment where society all breaks down. And none of the social constructs really exist anymore. And it just becomes anarchy, and everybody just kind of has to like rely on each other. You need each other. You know, someone has water, you don't have water. You have food, they don't have food. You're going to be going without power for months. You know, I moved in 92 to Miami, and took about 20 years. 92 was when Hurricane Andrew hit. It took about 20 years for Miami to look the way it does now. To me, Miami was grimy. It was rough. Now I go, and it's just this like beautiful, like, you know, almost Disney, like finished all the sidewalks. And I love it. I'm happy for Miami. It should look that beautiful, but it's interesting, this kind of thing. And I feel like, I don't know, what is alluring to you about natural disasters?
I mean, it is sort of something that I guess when we were talking earlier about the idea of ruin and unpainting stuff, and in some respects, I've been looking at like, I mean, it's kind of ruin lust, isn't it? You know, but it's like a lot of fragmented kind of buildings. Like there's also something that something visually quite interesting about that. It's about the fragmentation or the unfinished nature or the broken nature of things, I suppose.
And the impermanence too.
The impermanence. And so at times it's kind of metaphorical as well. I also think of it as like being metaphorical for painting as like this kind of ruin, like, or imagery. We're constantly bombarded with imagery and one image replacing another. And so I kind of think of it in those terms too. But then I also want to have like snippets of landscape in there, and a lot of the imagery that I'm looking at in books or stuff might come from, you know, different places. And with these pieces in particular, on the residency, there were a load of books left in someone's studio. And I was like, wow, let me have a look at them. And someone else had already started cutting them up. So I was like, great, this gives me license to do the same. So I kind of carried on. It was a bit naughty, but and some of those books were about California and like the different landscapes in California. And then I was just thinking about, you know, the more interesting landscapes or skies being those storm clouds and this, like the sort of reflecting the times that we live in as well, the state of things.
No, for sure. It feels like a natural.
You know, it kind of feels like things are falling apart.
It could be argued that humans are their own natural disaster too.
Yeah.
And then last thing, because we already covered and pretty well the painting, but talk to me just a little bit about the tension between something that is complete and incomplete, because that's something that's in the description, but I definitely see it. I just maybe want to hear you verbalize it.
I mean, again, I think it's a sort of intuitive thing that, like, when I'm making a painting, I haven't planned them, as I said, and sometimes it feels like, oh, there's a lot going on, and I just want to create this tension between abstraction and representation, or between something feeling like it's complete, but let's like break it down a bit as well and create more fragments.
Yeah.
And for me, that's really when a painting is finished, when it's maybe not behaving in a traditional way. I don't know. It's hard to kind of describe that. I don't want them to be polite, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So sometimes that sort of unpainting is like, trying to push that area of like obscuring the image, or like, Yeah.
No, I mean, I definitely see it going back to that, the element that the grid provides, right? If there was no grid kind of suggesting some incompleteness, it wouldn't have that movement to it, right?
In a way, it's playing, it's like building that, creating that tension.
Yeah.
And
it's almost like the grid almost represents space.
Yes.
Right? Like
it is, exactly. It's the non-narrative. It's like, it's like partly the breathing space, even though there isn't much breathing space. It's or the order, you know. To the kind of disarray that's going on.
Yeah, and it hints at that digital element too, because it feels like everything on digital feels like it's on rails. Yeah. As opposed to analog, where it's just like, you know, even if you look at a wave file, or at a sound wave that's digital, it's like step.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at something analog, it's the full sweep. It's a full line. Yeah. You know.
This painting also reminded me, I don't know if anyone's going to know this reference. Matt, I don't know if you remember this TV program called Nightmare. Oh yeah. Do you remember? And so this painting kind of, it was like this very early sort of game, like TV program thing, where contestants had to they were in this sort of really early like AR kind of space sort of thing, and they would have to sort of walk through this gridded weird landscape, and if they walked on the wrong like step or something, they would fall. And as a kid, that was so scary to me.
Is this
anyway, I just
fiction show or nonfiction? Or like a reality TV, nonfiction?
I don't know. It was a bit like the Crystal Maze, if you had that here. No, okay. No.
I'll ask you afterwards. Well, anyway, I want to open it up for questions. I'm sure people have anything that they want to ask. Go ahead.
I have a question about Mickey behind you.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I didn't even ask about the elephant in the room.
Yeah. Well, these pieces, as I said, they were all made in Santa Monica. And last year whilst I'm also painting, we haven't spoken about the textile piece as much, but I really also like, making these fabric assemblages. I went downtown and I usually collect my fabrics from like the scrap bin. I don't like to buy any new fabric really. Some of the fabrics come from my mum's projects. Some of them I brought over. But again, there is sort of mishmash of cultures and times, and Mickey would often, or Disney used to appear in my paintings quite a lot, often in the forms of just the hands, and sort of there was something very dark. There is something very dark about the whole Disney thing, and so I don't know. I saw this fabric and I kind of thought it's pretty strong, but I'm just going to use it. Yeah, but I kind of liked that there's like the happy and then the very angry Mickey, and I don't know. It's also
Speak it all to the project itself and maybe what you're going through emotionally as you're making it.
No, I don't think I'm really going through angry emotions when I'm working. Like not too much. I try to meditate that out. Yeah. I mean, probably at times, but I mean, he's just like another reference to the modern, really, isn't he? Like, I suppose it's a tool to reference a different era.
I think it also probably represents digital detritus, or Jetsam or Flotsam,
Yeah.
It's just like, I mean, you see old, I remember like going to my house after it got torn down, after it got sold, and just finding one of our like little old Mickey Mouse telephone toys and that kind of thing.
Exactly.
So it's just like it's also that
the remnants.
Yeah, the remnants of a childhood. Yeah. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a very aggressive way.
Yeah.
Some say it ruined New York. Any other questions? We definitely want to hear from you.
I heard that Mickey isn't copyright anymore.
Isn't?
I think so.
Because it's a certain length of time, isn't it? Yeah. Right.
Well, you're probably right, because I know Batman, who I'm a huge fan of, is gonna hit that mark. And I'm like really stressed out, because then anybody could write one and there's not going to be any canon. So, and then like, what if someone starts writing better parallel stories? It's like what can happen, I think, is the Universal has the monsters, like they have Batman, Dracula, and all of those, but they have their own version of them, and that's how they manage to keep them. But I think even those are probably really old at this point. But yeah, no, all of that stuff is fascinating. Any other questions? No one's stressed out about Batman? You did? I read them every night. In fact, I get nervous when I read anything that's not Batman. Batman is so good. It's like, we won't get into it, but it's like, it's the Bat family. Anything else?
I think the superhero thing really took over from like mythology.
Oh yeah, for sure.
American mythology.
100%. 100%. I agree with that. I would say that Now I'm answering questions.
Go for it.
I would say that
This is your
Batman is true crime, which is a huge and has always been a huge industry, right? It's all serial killers and all weirdos. He doesn't, like, people forget, he doesn't fight street thugs that much unless it's like a thing. Superman is science fiction. So he's overpowered, but that's why he fights like things from out of other worlds or fifth dimensional beings. And then Wonder Woman is straight up mythology. So that's the trinity of the DC comics. I'm such a nerd. I'm so sorry. You got me going. I'm going to stop and change the subject. You had a question back there.
I just wanted to ask Diana to talk a little bit about what she's doing at the Huntington.
Oh yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, it's such a pleasure to be at the Huntington at the moment. Yeah, I'm looking at mostly the William Morris archive, but not entirely. They've got over 2,000 items in the art collection alone, and then there's all of the rare books and stuff. So my PhD, my practice-based PhD, was in collaboration with the William Morris Gallery, as Omar said, and Morris, we didn't touch upon this, but anyway, he was also really obsessed with the past and very preoccupied with medieval times as a way to look forward. So his kind of revival of traditional materials and his, the founding of the arts and crafts movement was in the Industrial Revolution, a kind of hit back at that. Anyway, so my interest in Morris particularly was like really about his, well, of course the pattern, but really about his own turn to the past as a way to look forward. So that's what I'm doing at the Huntington, and I'm going to be creating a new series of works. So it's like I'm very much looking at visual stuff. They've also got obviously an incredible collection of botanical taxonomies and guides, and that's something I love looking at, with this interest in print. So the archives at the Huntington are like just so rich, and to be able to look at them and to look at, these really old historical prints, and I'll use them in some future paintings.
They let you scan stuff?
And pardon?
They let you scan stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, because you're a resident.
Yeah, exactly. So I can use it, and I'm also writing a piece whilst I'm there for a journal, the Journal of William Morris Studies, and it's again going to be all about this idea of reproducibility and copies and stuff like this. And then working in the gardens. I'm told I'm not really allowed to paint. I was like, what? So I'm going to have to sneak out there and paint.
Oh, wow.
Unless you're part of this certain group. But looking at the plants and painting from the plants. Recent paintings back in the UK have also used a lot of plant forms.
Do you ever paint just plein air?
Yeah. Now and then. I have recently started like going out and using watercolors mostly. Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be the main practice, but I
just for enjoyment and
so enjoyable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like figure drawing classes. I'll still go, but exactly. It has nothing to do with my work.
Yeah,
but it is a muscle that you have to practice.
Absolutely,
otherwise
in observation.
You will just oof.
Yeah,
I forgot all the tricks that I would keep proportions. So I was drawing squat and wide or like too skinny. So the last time I was like, man, that's frustrating. I need to get back at it. Any other questions? No? All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. I mean, this was an amazing turnout. I really appreciate everybody's attention. This is awesome. I want to quickly thank Don't Look Projects. This has been a great experience. I love working with these guys, and they treat me right, so I know they treat their artists right. So thank you guys very much. I also want to shout out SLQS Gallery, who put the show on in conjunction. And so the show is called Flotsam and Jetsam. It's going to be running from July 19th to August 30th. I highly recommend anybody listening to this and watching, come check it out. And then you'll have a lot more insights into what you're going to see, because we got into it today. You're already going to be prepped. And then I am Javier Proenza. My podcast is called What's My Thesis? I do artist interviews every week. And then sometimes I'll interview galleries, collectors, anything that will help me understand the art world a little bit more. And it's a very LA local based podcast. I platform a lot of artists that are emerging out here. And sometimes I get opportunities to go to do cool stuff like this too. So thank you guys. And yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.